Welcome to the fourth branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening.
The country is not divided between Democrats and Republicans, but rather between those who seek knowledge and those who choose to stay and live in ignorance. Ignorance is the biggest threat to any democracy. It is, however, the ignorance of the ignorance which represents the greatest danger to society. It is what turns an ignorant man into a lunatic. Thus lies the danger, the peril even of a man, a community, a state, a country, yes, even a society. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. Indeed, it does. We've seen it, have we not? We've witnessed it. We are all living it, are we not? All men are born ignorant. Many have chosen to stay and live in ignorance. Only a few recognize ignorance is indeed the root and stem of all evil and choose to be ignorant no more. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the fourth branch program. First, a warning. This program is not suitable for all audiences. I repeat, the content of this program is not for everyone. To find out if it's suitable to you, answer the following two questions. Question 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? Question 2. Would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? Once again, question 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? Question 2. Would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? Your time is up, obviously. If you had difficulty answering either question, this program is not for you. If you answer yes to either or to both questions, this program is definitely not for you. But if both of your answers are absolutely not, this program is catered exclusively to you. You should stick around. It is enlightening, educational, and informative. Join me here on the fourth branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the fourth branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment.
Hello everyone, I am Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I take this opportunity to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Yes, it's Thursday, but on Thursday we will not have this program. So we take today, and we will be on tomorrow, to wish that you at the very least have the opportunity to have something to be thankful for. Here, on the fourth branch, we have something we call the glimmer of hope. There is a slight glimmer of hope peeking through the darkness which has covered the country for the past 2 years. The 2018 midterm election did not turn out a blue wave as expected by the Democrats or as claimed by the fanatics. However, the outcome provides some measure of hope. The country may begin to recover from the constant assault by the very individual whose principal job is to provide reassurance and lead the country to better pasture. I sincerely hope the Thanksgiving Day is another reminder that the nuisance is temporary and brighter days are right around the corner. Happy Thanksgiving to all. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Join me on our next social media broadcast. See you then. Hello again. We have been talking about the role of E.P.A. in the nation. I have never talked about such a boring issue which happens to be so important. It is so boring that we have not paid much attention to it. In fact, almost every presidential election, Republican candidate always make it a point to promise to dismantle the E.P.A. That's Environmental Protection Agency. The Trump administration had issued a number of executive orders. No, we're not here to talk about executive orders, but it is important to mention it because there is specifically one executive order that we would like to address, which is related to the issue of the E.P.A. We started talking about the importance of that agency, not only for the United States of America, but an agency which is probably the most important agency that we have here in the country. Yes, it doesn't seem like it, and I would venture to say it's because we don't pay much attention to anything or everything that has very big impact on our lives. And I hope that by providing some information about that very topic, we will have a different behavior whenever the issue comes up. The executive order in question is, first, let me quickly point that when Obama was in the Oval Office, I remember very clearly that Donald Trump was besides his full-time job that was the buffer-in-chief, he was very critical of Obama for using executive order to get certain things done. And he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said that when he becomes president, he will not have to issue a single executive order because he is so good at negotiating. He will be able to talk to people and negotiate. So the idea of issuing executive order would be a thing of the past. Now, let me say, for sake of conversation, he is already on his way to issuing even more executive order than Obama had. Despite the outcry by the Republican, Obama was one president who issued the least number of executive orders. We're not here to talk about that. I point that in passing because Republicans in general, they usually bring issues that they most likely don't have any interest in. Republican legislators pound it. Sometimes they bring issues not because they have any interest in it, but because it's the other side. So this is not, sometimes it doesn't even give you a sense that any of those individuals have any concern for the country, because things that have no importance, this is what they use to actually divide the country and get a group of people who rely on them, who think that they are smart. So they rely on those individuals to explain to them certain aspects of certain issues, certain legislation. And most unfortunately, like the Bible says, it's a blind leading the blind. So having said that, there is one specific executive order that Donald Trump issued, which is of extreme importance in the discussion about the EPA rule. It's called blocking the stream protection rule. Now, we have to establish the base, because there has to be some understanding that Republicans in general, they always err on the side of the disaster. It sounds crazy, it sounds ridiculous, but for reasons that are completely illogical, that's the way that they always behave. They listen to people who are so ignorant they could not even spell their own name, let alone talk about complex issues such as the Environmental Protection Agencies. And those are the individuals that it is almost impossible to have a conversation with someone who cannot even understand simple things, let alone complex issues. Wayne Dyer said the highest form of ignorance is when you reject something you don't know anything about. Walk into the Republican circle, you won't have any problem finding any such thing, because it's all over. It is the mantra. It is the pace of their logic. Now, the blocking the stream protection rule, which was an executive order by the Trump administration, is of importance because we're going to show you that as boring as that agency is, the E.P.A., as boring as the topic is, the environmental protection, the environment, it is probably the most important topic that we, the constituent, should pay close attention to and should have been very much involved in every time that the government does something that touches on the environment. We, the people, should have been up in arms. But unfortunately, there are always two groups. And on the Republican side, as I mentioned earlier, they always err on the side of disaster. They don't believe in science. They don't believe in climate change. But if you talk to any of those individuals, they would swear up and down that they went to school, they went to college, they have a degree, so they are smart. Which smart individual would hand a sharper knife to someone who threatened to stab them? I don't know, but to me, it doesn't sound too smart at all. That blocking the stream protection rule was regulation that was established not necessarily by the Obama administration, but strengthened during the Obama administration. What does that mean? A lot of companies produce very toxic material, chemical, etc. When the waste usually are disposed of, in the past, they used to dump the waste anywhere, in rivers and actually almost like hiding the waste, if you like, because dump it in the river, it goes at the bottom of the river, nobody sees it, but the impact is huge. The impact those things have, huge. Now, the particular executive order, what it does is it's saying it really doesn't matter where you dump your waste, your chemical, even if there is a possibility that it would seep through into our river. Now, you don't have to be a biologist. You don't have to be a scientist. But which sound-minded individual would give a pass to organizations whose executives are already prone to destroy our habitat, even when they were being fined? In other words, think about it this way. If you park your car in a non-parking zone and you are penalized for doing so, you are fined for doing so, your car may even be towed away for doing so, but you may not care because you figured you have the money. So every time you go to that particular area, you park the car there and you couldn't care less whatever happened, whether they fine you, they tow you, you just don't care because you figured you have the money. But it's not just about having the money, it's because you are not being penalized hard enough, stiff enough, so you figured it's a small price to pay. Let me give you the example. Companies, chemical companies that pollute our water system, that destroy our habitat, even whether it's the air or the water, they were doing it at will, even though they were being fined, penalized by our government. The reason is because what I'm about to say is purely speculation about the fee. Let's just say that the government issue a fine of $100,000 to company that dump waste near or into our rivers. Now, the company continues to do so anyway because they figured, hey, $100,000, I don't mind paying it because it would have costed me more if I tried to figure out a way to really dispose of those wastes. So I don't mind paying those $100,000 because this is peanut. So despite the fact they were being fined, they continue to dump waste into our rivers. They continue to pollute our air because the fine were not that they had to pay were not stiff enough. Now, if you think about it from a logical perspective, those individuals, they also live on this planet, and they also, they should be concerned about destroying it, but they were doing it anyway because they look at everything in terms of penny, in terms of cents, in terms of money, in terms of profit, in terms of revenue. So it would cost $200,000, $300,000 to dispose of the waste properly, but the government only asked me for $100,000. So just dump it into the river. And that's what most of those companies that produce a lot of waste, very harmful waste, they continue to either dump them directly into the river or they dump it nearby, close enough that those toxic material would seep into our rivers. Now, when Obama came, walked into the Oval Office as president, so he started to enforce and increase the fees, the penalties. Not only rules and guidelines were added, but EPA had the mandate to enforce them and to slap those violators with more fees. And during the Obama presidency, there was a huge decrease in violation. There was a huge decrease in polluting our water system. And come Trump administration. The first thing that he did, he placed as administrator of the EPA an individual who, during the Obama administration, was very critical about the rules, the regulation, and they call it was strangling businesses, stifling businesses. Now, you may not spend your time understanding the importance of the EPA agency, or you may not even give it any thought as to when you hear a piece of news telling you company X was fined because of violation of sort, whether it's the air that the company violate the amount of pollution put into the air, or chemical waste into our water system, you may have not paid much attention to it. But this series we are debating is to provide you information so that you can appreciate the importance of not only the agency, but the necessity for the agency to enforce laws, regulation, guideline, and to make certain that those companies abide by them. Now, as I just mentioned, that the Trump administration issued a blocking the stream protection rule. What that means in plain English is companies that produce waste, chemical waste, can dump their waste in areas that may let those chemicals sift into our river stream, and they don't have to worry about anything. Now, that may sound to you like a nightmare, because which government, instead of protecting the constituent, instead of protecting the citizen of the country, instead of protecting the habitat, the only one we have, now say to companies, hey, you don't have to worry about that. Hey, you can pollute the water system. We don't have any issue with that. And this is not a joke. This is not a speculation. It is one of the executive order that the Trump administration issued, blocking the stream protection rule. The stream protection rule was set for the very purpose of preventing companies that produce waste, chemical waste, to dump them anywhere near our water system. That's what that protection was for. Trump issued an executive order and say, block that. Literally saying to those companies, don't worry, we're not going to fine you. You can do it. Marcus Cicero, a Roman philosopher, said, any man can make mistakes, but only an idiot will persist in his error. Every time that I take a particular topic that impacts, and the reason I'm talking about it is because if it only impacts Republican, that seems to be fine with those things. Hey, if you're ignorant enough and you're okay with that, then you should pay the price. But unfortunately, as I always mention, and I wrote several times about that, your ignorance is not private nor personal, because your ignorance impacts me, impacts the rest of the country. So ignoring your ignorance is actually a suicidal behavior for me. So I cannot simply just ignore the ignorance of those who simply either think they're not going to be around long enough to suffer the consequences, or they feel better making a little bit more money because, hey, they're not going to be around long enough. But they are ignorant enough not to realize that their kids, their grandkids, their great-grandkids in our habitat are being destroyed by those very behavior. And whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you will pay the price. So the idea of ignoring that is out of question. And that's the reason this particular program is in existence today. Because the very purpose of the fourth branch is to combat ignorance. Because there is a cult of ignorance in the country, but most likely, almost exclusively in the Republican circle. Those are not speculation or assumption, the kind of ridiculousness and stupidity when you tune into Fox and you hear, because those individuals, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes they cannot even understand the simplest thing, let alone talk about complex things such as the environment. That's why it's simpler, it's easier for them to just simply ignore science. There is no such thing as climate change. There is no such thing as this. There is no such thing as that. It's much simpler. It's easier. So why should you listen to individuals who have nothing to offer you but a path to destruction? And I mean that literally, because every time we ignore the consequences of our actions, we pay some price for it, a little at a time. Yesterday, I mentioned people who live near or under electrical grid will find out later in life that they have cancer. So it didn't happen overnight. It happened little by little until later on they find out it's because they have been living near, close to electrical grid. Now, E.P.A. is the agency whose job is to protect our habitat. That's the principal job of the E.P.A. Now, most Republicans who want to get rid of the agency, they always cite rules are too stiff for business, rules are bad for business. And I have yet to understand as to an agency whose job is to protect our environment, which means to make certain that businesses behave, have corporate responsibilities. We expect those in business, the executive, who are also citizens of this country, to behave in a way that can help preserve our habitat, Earth. That's the only one we have. And yet, past administrator Scott Pruitt was placed there for one single reason: to destroy rules and regulation, get rid of all of them. And the Trump administration applauded the job that Scott Pruitt did. Now, if you weren't paying attention, the great job that Scott Pruitt did was to either get rid of rules and regulation, loosen regulation, remove fees and penalties, and make certain that companies don't have to worry about any violation of polluting our air or polluting our water system. Would you drink out of a toilet? Would you? If I hand you a glass of water and I tell you that that glass of water is filled with toxic chemical, would you drink it? Now, if I try to force you to drink that glass of water after telling you that it is poison, it is toxic, it might kill you, you might get sick, may destroy some of your major organ, liver and all, would you drink that glass of water? I guarantee you, you would fight tooth and nail not to drink that glass of water. You would do whatever strength that you have. You would fight not to drink that water. Which means you understand that something that's harmful for you should not go into your body. At the very least, that you able to process that piece of information and understand. If I didn't tell you, that's one thing. But if I tell you, give you that piece of information, I'm fairly certain that you're not going to go along and drink the water. But for reason that only Republican constituent and Republican legislators, elected official, for only they and they alone can explain how in the world they are forcing people to put into their body chemical waste. Yes, it's not in a glass of water, but it is sifting through the rivers, the water that we drink, the water that we use to cook, the water that we use to take a shower. All of those chemicals, when the EPA loosened the regulation, the rule, and said to those companies, no more fine, don't worry about those kind of things. Now those companies, it's like They have carte blanche to do whatever they so like. They don't have to worry about penalty. Now, Republicans sell these ideas to the constituent by telling the constituent, well, when we put all those regulations, we stifle businesses and the economy cannot grow in a bunch of crap. Now, what good is the economy if you're not enjoying good health? What good is the economy if you're dying? But what makes it worse is not just you. Future generation will pay that price. So it's your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, and beyond will pay the price of you today going along with those elected officials who simply want to get away with those rules and regulations. The EPA is not an agency that any administration should give the free rein to just let things happen. Because the EPA was created by Richard Nixon, and notice how long ago that constituent and government official were concerned about our environment. They were so concerned about the environment that it was judged necessary to have an agency whose main sole job is to protect the environment. Richard Nixon was a Republican. That's telling me at some point there was Republicans in this country who used to be concerned about the plight of the country, who used to be concerned about the citizen of the country. There was so many concern about pollution, air pollution, water pollution, about all kind of debris that were being thrown at our water system, that in addition to accidents, because there were a lot of accidents that do happen, natural accidents that do happen. Not that it's okay, but we can understand that. But when you have individuals who purposely decide that it is cheaper to pollute a water system because, well, now even more so today under the Trump administration, it's way much cheaper because you don't have to pay anything. So why should those organizations care? Now, the topic itself, as I mentioned at the very top, sounds boring. Because talking about the environment, that's one of the topics that, you know, most people in general are inclined to ignore. Republicans in particular are more inclined to make certain there is nothing that blocks any company from just get rid of the waste, however they so choose. If you go to EPA.gov, you would notice at the very top of the site, they put in a very small letter. Usually they hide those things at the very bottom, but for sake of those who want to know about how far behind we have fallen since Obama left the Oval Office, at the very top, there is a small letter that they tell you that anything that you want to know about the EPA before January 20th, you have to really go to the archive to find that out. And they do that for a reason, because all those rules, all those regulations, they are no longer available. If you just go to EPA.gov, you don't pay attention to that. All you see is what you're reading, and you think, oh, they're doing a great job. They say they're protecting the water. They say they're protecting the air. They say they have, until you start reading and drilling down into what they say, it's absolutely nothing. They talk about fine, but if you pay close attention, they tell you it's almost impossible to imagine there will be anything at all that those companies would do that would get them to be fined by the Trump administration. Because as far as Trump is concerned, regulations are unnecessary for businesses. Now, that happened also in the financial sector, topic for another time. But the environment needs to be protected. Now, why should you be up in arms that the Trump administration had removed most of the rules, the guidelines, and even the fees that company had to pay when they violated those guidelines? Why we, the citizen of the country, should be up in arms? I don't know if you have another way, another place, another planet to go to escape the destruction that's happening right here on planet Earth. There are already enough catastrophes that impacting our planet. Now to add the human factor to it. So forget about all the natural disasters. Now we are helping speed up the process of destroying the planet. We are doing that. But I should be more specific. The Republican Party in general is responsible every time for helping to destroy our habitat. It doesn't suffice them to simply not believe in science. I wouldn't care less that they want to stay ignorant, but it does impact our lives and those of future generation when you have someone, administrator of the EPA, who remove the rules, the guideline, and let company do as they please. And I'm going to show you why you, the citizen of the country, should be up in arms whenever you see the administration, any administration, no matter which administration it is, do something that hurt you, that harm the country. And if your idea of Republican or Democrat is to support your party regardless of the damage they're doing to the country, you are also part of the problem. Ron Paul said that real patriotism requires that we challenge our government, we challenge our party when it is wrong. So don't evoke the idea of being a patriot when you go along with everything that the government does wrong to you, to the rest of us, and to our country. That's not patriotism. And if we do not get seriously involved, to rein in the elected officials so that they do things really that help improve our lives instead of destroying it, we in this generation may live long enough to actually see the damage that they cause. Not that it doesn't matter if we don't live long enough, because it is preposterous that we have elected officials. We elect those people so that they can pass legislation that help improve lives, that help safeguard our nation. And yet, time and again, you can set your watch whenever Republican takes over the level of the government, they work legislation that, no matter how much you spin it, have no other purpose but to destroy whatever was put in place to protect. As such, the EPA has been under attack since January 20th, 2017. And I'm going to show you why it is important to do whatever is necessary to change that, because our very existence depends on doing something about it. Now, you may live like you live today, you die tomorrow, it doesn't matter. But for those of us who are concerned about future generation, and if you are a young individual, Generation X, Generation Y, you should be equally concerned that you may not have the life that you dreamed of. Because if the planet is destroyed, and it will, if you do not have the health that you think you will have later on in a decade or two, then it wouldn't matter whether you're wealthy. It wouldn't matter, because you would not be able to enjoy that wealth, courtesy of the Republican Party, who is gung-ho about destroying the way of life for the American people. And this is not speculation. This is not assumption. I'm going to show you why Richard Nixon administration deemed it necessary to create an agency in order to clean up our environment. Yes, we can call him a criminal, but at least he had the decency to understand that our habitat, the only one we have, needs protection. Today, we have, time and again, Republican candidates running with the promise of getting rid of the EPA, as if this is the best thing that they can come up with. It's like somebody give you a gun, actually not even a gun, because shooting yourself would put an end to it pretty quickly. But give you a knife to stab yourself over and over and over and tell you this is the best thing that's happening to you. Yes, it's the Republican Party, for a reason that I have yet to understand. They work systematically to destroy our way of life, to destroy the habitat, planet Earth that we have. And EPA is at the center of that. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican, you're a Democrat. If you are concerned about this planet, If you are concerned about future generation, let's forget about the planet, because if you don't believe in science, because some ignorant at Fox, or you heard it from the president mouth, then you may not care. But the reality remains, if you're dumping chemical in your backyard, it is a guarantee that with time you will develop illnesses that is directly related to those chemicals. You don't have to be a scientist, a biologist, to understand that. You don't have to be a chemist to understand that. But you are smart enough to know, if I tell you this glass of water contains harmful chemical, you are smart enough to know you shouldn't drink it. Why are you not smart enough to make certain that those individuals we elect to better our lives do exactly that? And part of the problem is we, the constituent, because we keep electing the same individuals who do things that hurt us, that harm the country, and we keep saying, well, I'm just supporting my party. At what cost? Real patriotism requires that we challenge the political party, our political party, when it is wrong. That's patriotism. Not when you stand and put your hand on your chest and that's patriotism to you. It is not. Real patriotism requires that you challenge your political party when it is wrong. The Trump administration appoint E.P.A. administrator to destroy our habitat, and that is wrong. And I will show you that it is not just wrong in words, but we, the constituent, we are paying the price for that. So the idea that businesses are being stifled because of regulation, this is one area that we, the citizen of this country, all of us should stand up and say, the hell with those businesses. They should get really stiff fine and prevent them from dumping chemical, from dumping waste into our habitat. Because we, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren will pay the price. So yes, we need more regulation for the environment, not less. We'll be right back.
Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the 4th branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment. Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that
Ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question?
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story. But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special for a limited time.
We are not going to turn over the conservative movement to a con artist who is telling people one thing but has spent 40 years sticking it to working Americans and now claims to be their champion. We are not going to turn over the conservative movement to a con artist who is telling people one thing but has spent 40 years sticking it to working Americans and now claims to be their champion.
What if hip-hop never existed? Do you think there'd be as many heads screaming out, stop snitching? What if Adam and Eve ain't eat the fruit? You think we'd be able to see the truth?
I would like to remind you once again that Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, we will not air this program, but we will be back next day to continue the conversation about this very important topic, the Environmental Protection Agency. As mentioned at the top of the program, this is probably the most important agency that we have in this nation. Now, it may not seem so, but this is the agency that can determine the fate of mankind. The reason? Because our habitat, planet Earth, is under attack. And the worst part is today we have disasters, natural disasters. We have accidents, but the biggest culprit to the type of damage done to our planet is human. And here in the United States, we have the Republican Party exclusively an accomplice to making sure that continues to happen. Now, why should you care? Why should you? As I mentioned earlier, you may not live long enough to see the damage done to the planet, but your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids will certainly pay the price. Now, I'm gonna provide you with two major culprits, two major factors of pollution of our planet. And tomorrow we will discuss in detail some of those factors. There are more than two, but the two main factors we will discuss tomorrow and provide you with detail. We will provide you with some proof of what is being done to our planet. And we will show you as to why it is that important for you, the constituent, not to be passive about what's going on. Because this is not a campaign against Republican. This is not a campaign for Democrat. This campaign is to preserve the only habitat that we have. This campaign is to help, at the very least, extend the lifespan of mankind in this planet. Tomorrow, when we return, we will discuss, as mentioned earlier, the factors that are affecting our planet. And if you were to be a chemist, a biologist, you probably would have your hair on fire when you're able, because you would be able to see up close the consequences of what we humans have done thus far. Now, there are three major factors of pollution. That's the air, the water, and the light, the environment, the light, air, water, and. Now, let me give you the detail of which we'll talk tomorrow about, but let me quickly point out to you a few things about when the air and the water is polluted. Lately, for the past 5+ years, whether in news, and if you live close to or near beaches, you may have seen that a lot of sea creatures dead on the side of those beaches. And that happened because the water are started to be so contaminated that it started killing sea creatures. We eat fish and a lot of other goodies that come from that part of our world. Now, for those fish or shrimp or salmon or whatever that did not die on the side of the water, on the side of the beach, they absorb those chemicals, and in turn, when we eat, it also go into our system, right? You may have remembered that a few years ago, there was a girl in England that died of mad cow disease because presumably she may have consumed product that was meat that was already infected. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. You eat the fish, the meat, whatever it is, and if there was already chemical that was already absorbed into that creature, then we, mankind, end up being the next victim. But it is food for thought, as we will discuss in greater detail tomorrow about those. When our water is polluted, not only it kills fish and all other animals that actually live in water, aquatic animals. But when we humans get exposure to that, it causes neurological effects. It causes respiratory effect. It causes stomach problem, liver problem. And the list goes on and on. So it is not just in theory when we talk about the fact that when our water is polluted, we pay the price. It's not just in theory. We pay the price when the air is polluted because we are creatures who need water, who need to breathe the air in order to live. And if what we inhale or consume are contaminated, you don't have to have a degree in order to understand that you will be affected by that. Now, I will tell you, in all fairness, death would have been best options if you get infected or affected by those pollution. How so, you ask? Because what may happen beyond death, which means if you're not dead after you get ill, liver problem or neurological problem or respiratory problem, if you do not die, it may end up being passed to the next generation. And as far as what that means, we do not know just yet how, when one illness, disease, pass from one group to the next generation, and as it evolved, what happened to the next generation and the generation after that. So which means death would have at least taken care of that. So that's why when the E.P.A, any administration comes and tell you that we have to get rid of all those rules and those regulations, and if it has to be with our environment, we should all stand up and say, absolutely not. Because the price to pay is a long-term penalty. It's not just for a day or two. It is long-term for generations to come. And that should be of concern to any individual, Democrat or Republican, because the price to pay doesn't discriminate. Everybody who lives on the face of this planet will pay the consequences of action, of our action. And today, we can say that the action that are currently being taken by the Trump administration via the E.P.A, the agency, are bad for the country, are bad for our habitat, and are bad for planet Earth. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social, political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Join me on our next social media broadcast. See you then. This is again a reminder that Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, we will not have this program. We will return the following day to continue the conversation on the importance of the E.P.A. I do thank you for spending the time with me, and I hope you can join me again on Friday, or tomorrow actually, at 2 p.m. We will continue that conversation. I hope you have a good afternoon or a good evening, whichever it happens to be. Good day.
The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.